What do real pilots have to say about Stan's plane? I've talked to some interesting people, so keep watching to see what they think. Hey folks, we're talking about Stan's plane today from in the dogfight from the America Arc and Dr. Stone. I'm here at the EAA Air Venture, where it's the biggest fly-in in the country. And there's thousands of planes, thousands of pilots, so hopefully we'll get some expert opinions, starting with my dad.
Hello.
Hi, Dad. All right, tell us your name.
My name is Jenica.
Your name is
Brady.
Brady and
Bruce.
Bruce. So today I'm going to show you some pages from a comic book called Dr. Stone, and they have a plane that they built, like everything was sent back to the Stone Age, and they're so this plane is one of the things that they've built,
Okay.
and they're doing a dogfight. So I wanted to get your take on the way that it's designed and some of the flights that they do, and see how realistic it might be, or just, see what you think.
Okay.
Okay.
It's got the two wings, and it's got something between the two wings that's turned against the way the wind flow through there, which would be a giant air brake.
Okay.
If that's what it's intended to be, but it wouldn't fly very well with that in the position where it's shown there.
The flaps there in the middle.
These?
Yeah. Instead of ailerons or.
That's an interesting method. So we fly one swimming similar to this, the biplane anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so usually you'll have either one or two on one or both of the wings. But that's interesting. I would think that almost is harder to get the right airflow over if it's just an individual flap,
Okay.
like in between the two wings.
So airflow between the wings would.
There is airflow between the wings, but I would think it's harder to get control, especially in like rotational control between the wings versus it being on the actual wings.
I don't see any shots that have any ailerons. It's only these air brake things.
Yeah, those could operate that way if they turned opposite each other.
Okay.
Wouldn't be as efficient as having them out toward the end of the wing.
And the good guys steal one of the planes and upgrade it
Okay.
for a dogfight.
Right.
So this is the upgraded plane.
Taking one of the wings off, single wing.
Yeah. So, what do you think about taking off one of the wings?
It'll make it faster.
Okay.
It wouldn't climb as quickly. It might not turn as sharply, but it would certainly give it more speed.
So it's just about speed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks like this one has kind of the more traditional like ailerons on the back of the wings, and then it looks to me like the rudder and elevator. So usually that's what's giving you that side-to-side motion like a car, and then the up and down motion we talked about before. Those look like they're pretty regularly placed on that one. So this looks, I would think, closer to an airplane you would see here. You know.
Do you know much about like military maneuvers?
We have some of the same ones in competition aerobatics that the military uses. Do they name them?
They do. There's one called a brake turn. Do you know about that one?
I don't.
Can you tell what they're doing here?
Hold the emergency brake in midair. So, doesn't shoot like that. So this is kind of fun. It's really similar to the thing they do in Top Gun, you know?
Oh, really?
So what they'll do is they're pulling up. It'll be like one guy gaining on the other, and you're basically slowing down really quickly, so they shoot past you. Usually, I mean, you figure in a race, right? You're trying to outrun them, but instead they're taking that. So it looks to me from here like he's just banking hard on the second part.
Okay.
But
How about the yo-yo?
I don't know that it's a real thing. That could be, and I've not heard of it. But so let's see. So it looks like they're just kind of moving out of the way of each other to each be getting behind.
Yeah, they map it out there on the.
Yeah. Like it looks like they're fighting to be the one behind.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of how it works. You get behind the enemy, get him in the sides first. You're in.
Whoever turned tightest.
Yeah.
Is there such thing as an emergency brake in the air?
Sort of.
Maybe not if you have a prop. If you have a jet
Sort of.
engine, you can do reverse thrust.
You don't do reverse in the air.
Oh, you don't?
But there are flaps, there are air brakes,
Yeah.
there are things that can come out of the airplane just drastically slow you down suddenly.
Yeah.
The airplane pulls up, probably past vertical, and then comes back down. So that is a drastic slowing of the air. They use tremendous amounts of energy because they're not zoom climbing. They're just pitching up, using the whole surface of the airplane to slow it down, and then they come back down.
That's the whole purpose of that.
And that's relatively the last 20 years, probably.
So now we can talk about the engine. I'm going to show a different view.
It's like a pusher propeller. Majority of propeller planes have it in front, and some have it behind.
So we got the biplane thing going on, and then it's got engine in the back, which is unique for sure. That's pretty cool. Even like the propellers behind the airplane and stuff like that, like that's a pretty common thing. So
Do you know why?
No, not necessarily. Like it works. There are planes that do that. It's just certainly less.
Like there's not a reason they would choose to put it in the back?
No, I don't know exactly what it is that is favorable or unfavorable about it.
Is that 3 engines?
Well, not sure, but it
I
kind
see.
of.
I see 2 engines.
It looks like 1,
It's a
2,
prop.
3.
Typically, it would be a separate engine for each propeller in most of the planes I've seen. So I would think that's the case. And I think that might even be 3.
Oh, okay.
So,
3 engines?
well, because it looks like maybe that's not one. I'm
Okay.
just seeing the propeller from that far side.
Okay.
So yeah, with 2 of them, typically what you'll find in airplanes is that when you're doubling the engines, obviously they're going to go a little bit faster, but then it can be super disastrous when something goes wrong.
Really?
Because things are off center. So usually, like in an airplane, if you lose an engine, just turns into a glider. And you say, okay, that's fine. You still have all the same controls. Everything's, I mean, it's a little bit, but everything's generally okay. You just lose the engine. But when you have 2 engines, losing one and having one remaining is actually worse. Because now you've got this kind of extra rotational force going on, and you lost it. So you lose a ton of your performance, and then you get this kind of off-center power, I guess, that makes everything harder to control.
Okay.
So as long as everything's working, that's a great plan. But could go poorly.
Do you think a plane with that kind of a build would be able to handle those kinds of forces?
I mean, I guess if they built it strong enough. Yeah.
What would need to be strengthened?
It's all in the. All the
G
structure,
level.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you mean by that?
1G is what we weigh right now. Okay, so if you turn an airplane sharply, the centrifugal force increases the G. The airframe, wings and all that can do it. The early airplane, if it wasn't strong enough, you tried to turn it too fast. Now the airplane, say it weighed 1,000 pounds and you made 5 Gs in a turn, the airplane now weighs 5,000 pounds. So will it withstand that loading? So that's the biggest thing.
I see. Okay. So it just makes the plane weigh more.
Yes, so
And
you
it
have
can't
to have
handle
the
that.
structure
All the joints have to
strong
be.
enough to withstand that loading.
So do you think this kind of a plane could handle a dogfight?
You got to assume they built the structure strong enough to handle the G loads of a dogfight. Normally when there's two wings, you have exposed bracing between the wings to make it stronger. And then when it's a single wing, you have a spar through the wing.
Okay.
That
So there's no bracing here.
there's no bracing. They could be two single wings, but like I say, most biplanes have struts along the wings and wire bracing to keep them braced together.
Do you think these planes could handle this kind of?
Looking at it, I would probably not want to try these things in it. But the thing that I found in flying aerobatics too is that it's really a lot more about what's reinforced inside, and that can be hard to tell just by looking at it. So they could be incredibly reinforced, but it looks a little scary.
Kip was talking about yesterday was about you had to be really careful with flying one of these, like with the engine stalling or breaking something, things like that. Can you go into a little more detail about that?
So basically, there's a certain speed in which a plane can no longer maintain control, and it starts to go into a tailspin. And especially with these planes, because they're usually tail heavy, and so you usually don't want to test that speed. You don't have to, unless you're a really experienced pilot. You always have to know at every point in your flight where you're going to land if something goes wrong. And
So what are some kind of things that can go wrong up in the air?
You have engine failure, partial engine failure. That could be ignition, fuel, mechanical failure of the engine or propeller. The flight controls on these airplanes are controlled by cables. I got a cable break or stretch or come apart. Suddenly you no longer have flight control. Maybe just one. The airplanes do pitch, roll, and yaw. That's how you control the airplane. And so if one of those goes away, you no longer can control your nose up, nose down. You're pretty bad.
Yeah. Have you ever had to try to fix something in air because it broke?
Not on this airplane.
No? On another?
Yes.
What happened?
We had hydraulic leakage and had to get in and tighten up fittings.
Okay. So not too serious, but definitely necessary.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to land the airplane. Most modern airplanes are redundant for the main thing. 2 to 3 ways to put the landing gear down. A couple ways to actuate the flight. Most are 2 or more engines. So they're redundant. If something goes wrong, you might have to land, but you don't have to land immediately.
I see.
Pick your spot and have it picked.
Right. One of the attacks that they did was to release this acetylene gas
Okay.
right in front of the air intake here.
Okay.
You can see that up here.
Yeah.
And it made the engine stall.
Okay.
So do you know what's going on in the engine that made it happen?
Well, it's probably one is taking away the oxygen, which is what the engine needs to burn the fuel. And acetylene is explosive, so it could have damaged maybe some of the internal parts of the engine.
Oh, so
don't
just
know.
completely blown up the
Yeah.
engine.
So they made a acetylene bomb.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I had the name wrong.
I guess that would make sense. Did you make a pretty good sized explosion with acetylene?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that when that gets into the engine, it would.
Well, if it's acetylene, it would probably overspeed the engine. Acetylene's a very flammable gas. That's what they use for welding, and the old miners used acetylene lamps for light. So it would be like spraying extra gasoline into the engine almost.
So would it blow it up, or?
It may have overpowered it,
Yeah.
something like that, but I don't know that it would blow it up. But if they exploded that before the airplane, the shock wave, and if there's any pieces of whatever it was contained in might have damaged the airplane.
Okay. And then that's where it exploded like right before the air intake.
Yeah, I could see that it could damage it just by spraying more fuel into the engine.
Okay.
And it burns probably a lot hotter than, because acetylene, if you mix it with oxygen right, it burns about 5,000 degrees.
Ooh.
Now, probably not in the engine because it wouldn't have been pure oxygen under pressure, but it could have oversped it or damaged it. Yes.
Okay. Starting over from scratch, like everything in modern society has been taken away, and you have to go find the resources all over again. But unlike early 1900s, you have the knowledge that you have now. So with the knowledge you have now, what would you do to rebuild a plane from nothing?
Well, we know how to farm the wood, shape it. We know a lot more about aerodynamics now, so how to build a wing and control surfaces, flight controls, landing gear. We know a lot more about gasoline. That was one of the biggest limitations, was poor quality gasoline. So the engines were fairly low powered. Quite a bit about how to make propellers.
Okay. And
Reinventing the supply chain is the hardest part.
Yes, yeah.
Where do you get the wood? Where do you get the steel? The wire, all those types of
Yeah, I feel like the hardest thing would be trying to get metal parts, because if you restart from scratch, you don't have foundries or steel supplies to make metal parts, so you'd have to pretty much start a factory or whatever. And so, what would be your best friend? And engines that were already have been made. So, because making engines would be really difficult if you didn't have steel.
so what were some of the struggles for resources when like planes like this were made?
Finding good quality materials. Some of the early airplanes were made out of bamboo. And they'd wrap the bamboo with fabric or with wire to strengthen it so it didn't split. So to find something that's light and strong was a real major deal. Also understanding aerodynamics. A lot of it was hit and miss. You build an airplane and you fly it, you crash, and you say, okay, what happened? And you go out and you rebuild it to try and make it better. You might go out and crash again. That might happen 5 or 6 times. So every time you try to improve it a little bit. That was pretty common. And if a manufacturer was building a bunch of airplanes, then that was probably a pretty good design because it was working. This airplane they built almost 1,600 of, or I'm sorry, 6,000 of. So we know the design was good, the engineering's good. Otherwise, they'd have built a few and gone on to something better.
Okay.
But where do you get rubber for tires and inner tubes?
Right.
That sort of stuff.
It's innovative. Like it's not something that you really see now. I would think like rebuilding everything. It obviously depends on what you do now, but like going back, you would think it's easier to build the thing we already know works instead of create something new. So if you've got just the materials you have available to you, kind of have to go with it anyways. But that's pretty cool.
Very cool.
I love the fuselage there.
I'm a little confused with the opening there.
You got to get in and out somehow, right?
So do you think that was just made like that to look cool, or?
Probably. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's kind of like a sci-fi artist.
Yeah,
so-
that's
Okay.
what it looks like.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would
a
need
little steampunk.
Right. Exactly.
Looks interesting.
Any final thoughts?
No,
What do you think?
to see who wins.
Well, who do you think wins?
I go for the single engine.
Yeah.
I mean, single wing. I'm sorry.
The upgraded one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, comic book. It's gonna be on YouTube.